It's not unusual for the action to come down to the wire at the end of any legislative session, and 2021 is no different. As we tape this week's show, there are still huge issues yet to be decided, and a handful of historic measures that have already been signed by the governor. Here to help us break it all down is our line opinion panel for this week, starting with regular and former state senator Dee Dee Feldman. Senator Dianne Snyder is back with us. She's also, as I mentioned, a former state senator and is used to this sprint to the finish line in Santa Fe for sure. Rounding out our trio of former lawmakers is Eric Griego, who also served in our state Senate. And we will get back Merritt Allen. She may not be a senator, but she does own Vox Optima, a public relations firm. Thank you all for joining us this week via Zoom. Senator Feldman, as we are talking right now, here are just a few of the proposals that hang in the balance. Cannabis legislation, early childhood education funding, tax and redistricting reform, mandatory paid sick leave, the list goes on and on. Do any of these issues risk just being lost to time? Let's start there. Given how much of it is left, what are you afraid of getting left off?
I think they're all at risk of being defeated for the lack of time. And the process is such that each one of these issues is subject to a filibuster at this point. And so a filibuster on one brings three others down. So that means that the leadership has got to prioritize which ones of these are the most important. And remember that there are hundreds of other bills besides just the ones that you've mentioned,
right,
that are equal, that are important to certain constituencies and actually may have to be enacted in order to access federal funds or comply with a law. So this just brings to my mind the absolute influence and control that committee chairs have during the last week of the legislative session. If you delay a bill in a committee, like a judiciary committee, for example, that means the chances of not just the bill that you are delaying does not get passed, but it also completely jeopardizes the 100 other bills that are in your committee on your agenda, and also the 80 other bills that are on either the Senate or the House floor. So this is born of a process that really does not give enough time for thorough consideration of legislation.
We could tackle that on another show, the idea of how to do all this in a session. Senator Griego, let's go right to HB 12, the recreational marijuana bill. We just might as well go there. Pass out of Senate Judiciary early Thursday morning, as we all know, but the chairman, Joe Cervantes, says the bill, quote, is still not ready. And I sense an epic showdown on the Senate floor. What are you sensing?
Yeah, as we tape this, it is not on the Senate agenda for Thursday. So when this airs on Friday, it will likely have been scheduled, but there's no guarantee, to Dee Dee's point, that I think the leadership knows that the most controversial bills like this one are likely to be very, very long debates,
right,
potentially used as a filibuster by opponents, in this case of the Republicans. There's two other really important bills that I think could be victims of a too long a debate on HB 12.
Please.
The paid sick leave bill, which is also on the schedule for Thursday, so that will also be a long, controversial debate, and some business groups really want to use that to hold some other bills hostage, unfortunately, because they strongly oppose it. But I think folks are hoping that gets out. The one bright note, just because as we tape this, it looks like HJR 1, the constitutional amendment to provide funding for early childhood. There was a huge compromise, first time in the history of this bill after 10 years, to put some money into K-12 and some money into early childhood. That looks like that's going to pass. So probably by the time this airs, my prediction is that that will have passed the Senate, which is a massive victory for a lot of folks who've been working on that for 10 years.
Long time, exactly right. Senator Snyder, the Senate, I'm curious your opinion here. The Senate has a new look, as we know, and we've talked about that a lot. And have you noticed the 11 new members, new committee leadership are all impacting how business is being done? Do you sense something is more efficient, it's better? What's your sense of how, the new look is doing this session?
I think the new look has contributed greatly to the as Senator Munoz said, the increased animosity between the parties. And maybe he was speaking only about Senate Finance, but I think if you look at it, in addition to all the new members, which makes a difference always, the leadership, out of the 7 leadership positions in the Senate, only one has prior experience in Linda was actually a caucus leader, but they have no leadership experience.
I'm sorry, who are you mentioning? My fault.
I'm sorry, Linda, Senator
Lopez. Okay, gotcha.
Had some, but she's she's the whip now. One of the things that was, I think, helped the Senate in past years, whether you like the outcome or not, was the mutual compatibility between the leaders. And in this case, I know Senator Griego is happy, and this was part of the turnover. You had the President Pro Tem, who was dear friends and respectful of the Senate, Senator Engel, but you also had Senator Bill Payne, who everybody admired and respected. And then you had people on the Democrat side working to, I just believe you had a better opportunity in those days to reach a compromise or help get a bill brought forward than it is right now. And I think I feel quite sorry for Senator Wirth. All of this is being handed to him and hitting on the head with him. And I think he's doing an incredible job at what he's done so far. But I do think that makes a big difference. But I don't think, other than passing the bills, the constitutional amendment for early childhood monies and K through 12, I think those kinds of bills, which are now passed because of the change in the body of the Senate, there are still people on both sides who aren't happy about that.
That's a good point.
And don't feel, I mean, by Senator John Arthur Smith, and Senator Mary Kay Papen, whether you like them or not, they were well respected. So, and it was their voting that took them out. So, but you don't have that relationship that we had in the past. So I think there's still some animosity or concern.
Probably so. Let me ask Merritt. Let me ask you this: redistricting reform, another big issue. You're involved with this one for sure. We still have 2 bills at play, but the front runner now doesn't address everything the task force suggested last year, and Speaker Egolf has been a little less than supportive of relinquishing, any power in this once in a decade responsibility. What's your sense of where this stands now with SB 15 and others on redistricting?
I think it's very difficult to say. I sat in and testified at the House Judiciary hearing last week, and Senator's point is straight on. The animosity is there. What's very clear to me is the Democratic caucus will not let any good governance bill that has a Republican's name on it go forward. And I think it's too bad because
who's the block there? Is it Mr. Egolf? Is it do you want to name names? Who's blocking this?
Oh, absolutely. I think the speaker feels his hand has been forced. Made some unfortunate comments that have come back at him. I think he feels defensive. He took every opportunity to co-brand particularly Representative Dow, who's been very vocal in support of redistricting, to co-brand her with the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. If he could have images of her and Couey Griffin with their arms around each other, it would make him very happy. I don't think that's appropriate. I think it would make a lot of sense to align the redistricting bill, with amendments to the For the People Act that is in the U.S. Senate right now. As we were talking before the show, it is going to be hard to get 60 votes in the Senate on that, but it is what the congressional Democrats want. It is what seems to be the desire of the New Mexico State Democratic Party. And the 2 bills, there's a House bill, there's a Senate bill. Senate Bill 15 still needs to be amended to acknowledge tribal boundaries, eliminate the use of partisan data in drawing maps, and to be truly neutral with regard to considering incumbents, and to simply prevent gerrymandering. House Bill 211 has that language already in it, has the support of a large number of both Republicans and Democrats. But to earlier points, this is where committee chairmen become very powerful.
Right.
And it's doubtful whether it will get to the floor. And this is also where it's hard with our very short-term part-time legislature, is what really has to happen in the 21 legislature is a budget and redistricting.
Right.
And one of those things is at risk right now.
That's a good point. Let me go to budget. Senator Griego, as of this taping right here, as we're doing this Thursday midday, we don't have yet a final budget approved, but it's close. It looks like it's going to be about $7.4 billion, which is the number we've been hearing for a while, an increase of about 5%. But most of those increases are federal bucks to handle, pandemic relief. What's your sense of how we've handled, starting with the governor and whoever else you want to bring into this, but how we've established and fighting for this particular budget line?
Well, the one big story is there has been, I think, the Democratic leadership, despite some of the rhetoric you hear from some of the business lobbyists, have bent over backwards to provide aid for small businesses and for the business community, loans, grants. A huge part of the budget is not just using federal aid, but using a lot of state money to sort of backstop all the struggles that local businesses and state businesses, all said and done between federal and state money, it's close to $1 billion that's being given to businesses. And that's been contrasted with how much of that has been set aside for workers who've been really most impacted on COVID, for example. So I think the budget is I think it's a moderate budget. Certainly, there's a huge amount that's staying in reserves. I think some folks would have liked to see more of that invested in helping workers adjust to this economy, some additional assistance for families. We're probably going to talk about the tax bill, but certainly the tax bill could have been much more strong in terms of helping working families. There were some victories there, the working families tax credit, the LIFTR to help sort of folks who are struggling in this economy. But I think part of the narrative is, despite what the complaints from some of the corporate lobbyists, I think that overwhelmingly a huge amount of this budget is dedicated to help businesses through this very, very tough time. And I think there's been a modest increase for a lot of public spending and investments in not just public sector employees, but public investments in things like healthcare. So overall, I think it's a budget that I think reflects the chairmanship of the Finance Committee, which is, let's make sure we take care of a lot of the businesses who will be affected. And then on tax policy, I think we could have been a bit more aggressive. I think the tax reform bill 291 was pretty good. But I think we certainly could have asked more from corporations, more from the wealthiest New Mexicans, and given more. Capital gains, for example, was sort of really reduced, that tax increase. I think we could have asked more from those who are doing the best in this economy and tried to help families and kids a little bit more.
I have to end that there. That's an interesting last note for right now. We're back in a moment to handicap the field of candidates interested in running to replace Deb Haaland in Congress.